Flip the script.
I get messages from Muslims in Lebanon currently. They're all thanking me.
I've never done cat sat, but there it is.
أهلين وسهلين.
Here we go. When I say, sing something. 1, 2. Your best Syrian. Go. I'll give you some reverb. Warm it up, baby.
I gotta think of it.
Hey.
You know what? I'm gonna sing my song.
Do it.
برهم حكينا زعلان سلينا برهم حكينا زعلان سلينا برهم حكينا زعلان سلينا. It means Abraham speak to us. So
Abraham, speak to us.
that's it.
Abraham, speak to us.
Why,
Abraham, speak to us.
You got to do that in the Donald Trump voice.
Speak to us. Abraham, speak to us. He's a great guy, one of the founding fathers, one of the patriarchs. Abraham, speak to us. Abraham, speak to us. Let's give you a little. I like.
Wow. You made me a musical icon.
Here we go. Abe Hamra in the house.
What's up?
Abraham, speak to us. Okay, that'll be our theme for this episode. Welcome to Ami's house, Abe. Good to have you.
How you doing, Ami? Thank you for having me.
So, originally you hail from Poland and Europe. Is that correct? Being a Jew.
Germany to be more exact. But I think they called it Damascus, Syria, Germany.
Okay. So we have a Jew from Arabia.
Our second Syrian.
Oh, that's true.
Your second?
Yeah, we had Adela Kochab.
I really wanted to be your first.
She was white passing Syrian. You're the first. You're the first
I
Harif.
do love Adele. I do love Adele.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
And she's Mexican. You hail from Damascus. Or what do we call it in Hebrew? Damascus. How do they pronounce it? Damascus?
In Arabic, it's Damashq or Sham.
Damashq. Shem.
Shami is the way to do it. Sham is the original way to say Damascus, and includes 11.
I want to be respectful to your culture.
Well, thank you. I don't want you
Sham.
to appropriate.
You hail from Sham. And I think it's important to get your insight onto Jews from the Mizrahi Jews from the Arabic world, because there's so much obviously in vogue to talk about this, dispelling this myth of the Jews being exclusively white settler colonialists in this conversation. But before we just get into that, just a little bit about your background, your story. You say you come from Damascus. Just take me to the beginning. Take me back.
Well, first, I just want to apologize to you because I don't think I represented my culture correctly. I came perfectly on time, and we're usually at least half an hour to 45 minutes late. So
Fair enough. Yes, I prepared for that, and I'm a little offended.
That's
a little
okay.
offended that
I
you tried to pander to the Ashkenazim here and get here exactly on time, and I don't appreciate that.
Well, we want to start at 11:30. We told you 12:30.
You laugh, but for my wedding, actually, we sent out 2 invitations. One invitation to my side of the family, which said the wedding was starting at 6:30, and the other invitation was to my wife's side of the family, which stated the accurate time, 8 p.m. Surprisingly, not one Syrian came before 8 p.m.
Wait, so you say it again because I'm brain farting. You told the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim different things.
Yes,
obviously.
we told the Ashkenazim 8 p.m. the time the wedding was actually going to start.
Right.
And then we told my side, the Syrian side, that the wedding was starting at 6:30. That was printed on the invitation.
And they all got there?
They all showed up at 8 p.m.
Exactly.
So we had a full
Talking
wedding
to your
right
mic,
on time.
Michael?
I've heard that story before. Is that and it's actually true? I thought that was just a myth.
It is 100% true.
Wow. I knew I was from. I moved from Crown Heights to Teaneck.
And then someone invited me for dinner in Crown Heights at like 8:30, and I showed up at 8:30, and no one else came for like 2 hours. And I was like, that's how you know I moved out of Crown Heights to Teaneck. I expected it to start on time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good. So you got acquainted the
I was
hard way.
embarrassed. I was sitting there by myself with the husband and wife just cooking for 2 hours.
But Abe, wait. So you told the Ashkenazim the other side, and that means you married a white girl.
Well, no, she's half-half.
Dr.
but
Umar
she's,
would be very upset. Do you know who that is?
I do not know who Dr. Umar
You
is.
know who he
Who's
is?
that? Who's Dr.
Oh,
Umar?
eh,
I need to
he's-
meet Dr. Umar.
Who is it?
Dr. Umar, he's like he's sort of like
A racist.
black
One of-
supremacist,
yeah,
like
yeah.
these black people marrying snow bunnies, too many black men, too many brothers marrying white women.
Listen, my wife, I got lucky. Her dad is Syrian
Oh.
originally from Israel, and her mom's Ashkenaz. But at least, she knew how to cook the food that I ate, so that was most important thing.
Yeah, you would never settle for potatoes.
No, what am I gonna do with potatoes and chicken? I went to an Ashkenazi Shabbaton. I almost starved to death.
I told this Sephardi guy that I was marrying. I was getting married. He's like, "Oh, like an Ashkenazi?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Really? Like with the gefilte fish and the carrot, the whole thing?"
Oh God,
We got spicy gefilte fish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
Moroccan.
right. That's fine.
very good. Moroccan. Yeah,
There-
Moroccan
there-
fish is
There's
classic.
a hierarchy, right? If you're born in Syria,
Oh,
is,
yeah.
is that are you
That's
higher
tops?
up on the
Well,
social?
to me, it's tops, right?
Yes.
But
I mean, every Sephardi thinks
everybody thinks they're number one, but the truth is, I'm number one. Yeah.
but a lot of people agree on Moroccans. It's like a thing. It's like a Syrian.
Moroccans.
Then there's Persian, Mashadi, Tehrani. You got Morocco. People put
Yeah, yeah.
Moroccans. I don't know.
I put Moroccans right under Syrians. Syrians, Lebanese,
nice.
Egyptians were all in one category. Right?
Syria's Lebanese, Egyptians.
The Lebanon, the Israeli, the Lebanon area were all one. Then you get the Gulf states.
Have you ever heard
of
that word,
Northern
Lebanon?
Africa.
No.
The Levant.
Is like Uzbeki on the bottom, like the.
I don't even know where.
Baltic?
No, I'm joking.
Bukharian.
Yeah, Bukharian,
No, so-
the like Soviet.
You're on the line
Syria.
of Ashkenaz and Sephardic, so we really don't know what to do with you guys, but we still love you.
What about
Don't look at
Bukharians?
me like I'm Uzbeki.
Yeah,
Oh, you're
he
not.
kind of looks like an Uzbek. That's me.
You do.
You an Uzbek.
I went to at Kiddush once. Someone came up to me and just started speaking Russian, and they were. He's like, I just thought you were from.
He thought you were
Moscow.
Rasputin.
I'm sorry.
He
He
thought
just
Michael.
assumed I could
Da,
speak fluent
хорошо.
Russian. Yeah.
He thought Michael was a Russian priest. But okay, so take us back to the beginning. You're one of these people, like, you meet a lot of Jews that are Sephardic, that are Mizrahi, which are synonymous terms, right? Mizrahi, Sephardic.
Yeah, I just call myself Sephardic.
Yeah,
That's just,
but you don't. But they're American or Israeli.
Right.
And when I met you, you were one of the only people I've ever met who's of this generation, not grandparents, from Syria, legit from Syria.
born, yes. in
Take us there. Give me the go. Give me the intro.
Yeah, so I was born in 87 in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
What a lot of people don't know is that there were about 5,000 Jews that was left over after 1948 in Syria.
Mhm.
We weren't allowed out to immigrate out. We were basically political pawns.
What happened in
for-
1948? Just one step back.
In 1948?
No, I mean the Jews were expelled from Syria.
So there
It was a
were-
serious question. It sounded like he's playing. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
It's
no,
still
I
like,
know,
what
no,
hap-
no,
what
I know what
happened?
happened in Israel. What happened in Syria in 1948?
So
Yeah,
a lot
sorry.
actually
Thank
happened
you.
in Syria in 1948, and I'll give you some very interesting insight from my grandfather, who's
Yeah.
telling me what happened in 48
Right.
while he was in Syria. So different parts of Syria experienced a little differently. Halab, for instance, in I think November of 47, there was something called the Harayit. The Harayit means the fires. And that's where they burnt, Jewish houses of worship, synagogues. They burnt Jewish businesses. They attacked Jews with a lot of violence. So this was happening all throughout the Arab world. The
Fahud in Iraq.
the Farhud in Iraq was 41.
Yeah.
As a
and
response to Zionism.
as a response to the idea of Zionism.
Right.
Right. It wasn't even the established state. And honestly, a lot of
Way to
people
try to blame Israel for everything.
and
Michael.
they love to they love to start in 48. It's just
Well,
inco-
you know something
incorrect.
interesting about that. Dr. Einat Wolf was talking about how the Holocaust. This is her line. It wasn't supposed to be never again. It was supposed to be never in the first place. The state of Israel was supposed to be established in the 40s, but
to prevent it.
But because they were trying to establish it, the mandate came down in the 40s. Because they were trying to establish it, all this violence broke out around the Arab world, which prevented it from being established. And sorry, in the 30s. Sorry, in the 30s, and then the Holocaust happened. And then
And the
and
Arab
then-
world said, "Okay, you had the point."
and then the establishment of the state became like a
Accepted,
necessity.
yeah.
Like, where are these refugees going to go? They have to
Right.
go somewhere.
You see, I don't like starting there because I think it gives us a lot of it gives us disservice because every time people start from 48, it's like, look, they were offered two lands. The Arabs rejected their land, and we accepted. So that's the premise that we start defending from. And I think it's a major mistake. I like to start from the Balfour Declaration of 1917. The Balfour Declaration of 1917 did just that. It split up the land, or proposed to split up the land, into two, an Arab Palestine and a Jewish Palestine. The Jewish Palestine obviously is Israel. I hope people are smart enough to understand that you can change the word from Palestine to Israel. It doesn't change much. And the Arab Palestine was Transjordan. That was 70% of the entire region.
It's very progressive.
Area, and they got it. Now, the remaining part was what they were objecting to. The Balfour, the Jewish Palestine, was what they were objecting to. Now, during this entire area, Iraq was created, Syria was created, Lebanon was created.
Post-World War I, as the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, just to get the historical context, we are carving out, the Western powers are carving out these countries in the Middle East.
Ethno-states in the Middle East.
Sort of, but they're not even based on the right tribal allegiances. It's kind of at random, which is why you have so much infighting in this part of the world.
Yeah, and
right?
I ask people very often is, why don't you stand up and demand a second state in Iraq for the Jews? Baghdad was one of the 3 provinces that were given and made into modern state of Iraq. Baghdad was 20% Jewish before the Palestinian Grand Mufti came into Iraq in 41, staged the Golden Square coup, placed Rashid Ali as a prime minister with the collaboration of the Nazis that ethnically cleansed the Jews from Iraq. So wouldn't the Jews who were ethnically cleansed, aren't we deserving of a second land in Iraq?
So the great irony is when I post a lot of videos on Instagram, and we'll get into all the social media stuff in a minute, but one of the big comments from all these people who think they know better is, this guy thinks the conflict started on October 7th. What about 75 years? Go back to 48. And I'm like, go back to 41. Go back to the 30s. Go back to the 20s. Go back to the... and they call Israel the colonialist entity, the Zionist colonialist entity. What about Arab colonialism and imperialism across this part of the world, and the fact that all these Jews are being expelled in mass and persecuted, and the pogroms in the Arab world, forget Eastern Europe and the Arab world, all these Jews being expelled. You're talking about the Farhud in Iraq, and back to what you said in Syria, what was going on, the Great Fires.
Yeah, so there were fires, there were riots everywhere.
So who's expelling who here, and who's oppressing who?
So the Jews have... there's a myth that Jews have lived in peace with the Arab neighbors for so long. The truth is, we lived as dhimmis. You remember, the Ottoman Empire classified Jews and Christians as dhimmis, and even before that...
And you define what a dhimmi is.
A dhimmi is a second or third class citizen, depending. The idea, and you'll hear this at protests all the time, Khaybar Khaybar ya Yahud. Nobody really knows what that means.
Khaybar Khaybar ya Yahud.
Khaybar Khaybar ya Yahud.
Khaybar?
Khaybar. Khaybar.
Good rhythm.
And I hope
Khaybar
Khaybar Syrian. You got I'm an immigrant.
Khaybar Khaybar ya Yahud. Please define what that is, and you hear it at protests.
You hear it at protests, the really more Arab protests that are joining. A lot of the protests you see are just white Americans who are clueless. But the real Arab protests, you hear Khaybar Khaybar ya Yahud. And it kind of tells you what this whole conflict is about. Khaybar was the first battle that Muhammad entered into. The town in Medina was primarily Jewish. So when Muhammad came and attacked Khaybar, he was winning the war against the Jewish town, and he gave the Jews 2 options. Option number 1, continue fighting with me, and if I kill you, you die. Number 2, surrender. And with your surrender, there has to be conditions. One of those conditions is that you pay a tax called a jizya. That you pay, you can't practice your jizya. There were a lot of restrictions placed, but there was a promise given.
Let him get it out. This child.
He looked at me.
Jizya.
I've heard it so many times because I'm a little more educated on the subject. Dhimmis play the jizya tax.
Got it. Yes. So, and there were a lot of restrictions.
Well, it's interesting that surrender with conditions is something they know about.
Yeah, well, that's how it all started, And so the Jews said yes. And from that very war, that created the idea of a dhimmi. And so every Arab leader afterwards said, okay, these Jews and Christians, they're the people of the book. So we are going to offer them dhimmi status. Even though we were second and third class citizens, it was a sought after status.
Yeah, because pagans and whatever were killed.
Were just killed.
Right.
Zoroastrians fought for centuries to get into the dhimmi status.
So dhimmi meant Jews and Christians because there is some recognition of holiness, people of the book, B'nai Yisrael, whatever they
exactly.
Not Yahud,
but where were you? Where were you? Under the Muslim.
Yes, always
Muslim
second class,
1.
and you pay a tax to be. Yeah.
So now just think about it. Since Khaybar, there has never been a Jewish state in that region with a ever expanding Islamic caliphate and Arab colonization. Israel was the very first thing that undid what Muhammad did at Khaybar. That's the issue.
And what year?
The issue is the inability.
600.
What year was
Year
Khaybar
600 in the
around?
6th century,
It was
7th
one of the
century.
first
Early.
battles.
This is
Triple digits. We're talking.
This is the beginning of Islam.
The beginning.
Okay.
The Islamic conquest, and he comes across the Jews and he says, "Here's what you got to do." So basically, what you're saying is the existence of a Jewish state on what they deem as Islamic land is the offense.
It's offense.
Yeah, and that is what's animating all of this. Not
We're not honest about it.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's like, "Oh, 2 states and 15 states." It's like, guys, you're not scratching the surface of
Right,
the issue.
right.
And our voice hasn't been heard. I'll be very honest.
Yeah.
The other voices of that may have not experienced as much are the ones that are being spoken to. The voices that don't offend, the voices that don't want to speak about the real facts.
Just to give the audience here a little sense of where you're coming from, I want to put all this here for a second and revisit this whole
Done.
ideological battle that you're talking about, because we're getting right into it. But back to what Michael's
my
question
story.
about in 48, what was going on in Syria,
Yes.
your family origin story, just the reason you're so acquainted and affiliated with this from a very personal perspective.
So it was horrific. There were battles, obviously, and then the reason a lot of the Jews left
Mhm.
the Middle East in all these countries is because they no longer wanted to live, one, as second-class citizens,
Mhm.
two, they no longer wanted to live at the whims of their leaders,
The
and
risk.
when they want to violate the dhimmi promise of protection.
Mhm.
And they don't want to be discriminated against. And so when there was a latest clash of violence brought in by these Arabs, the Jews said, you know what, we're just going to go to Israel. And that's exactly what happened. And a lot of the Jews immigrated to Israel out of Syria even before the establishment of the State of Israel, right before it, because you have to understand it was all happening.
And you
at
told
the
me
same
Assad Sr., there was a period he was granted, Assad's father, the current Assad, his father, who was the leader of Syria at the time,
Yes.
was granting Jews to leave.
When? Not 48.
No, but you're saying there was a period before
So
then.
in 48, between 48 and before Assad came into power,
Yeah. There was like a grace period when Jews could leave.
in depending what part of Syria they were
Okay.
in. But before Assad came into power, conditions for Jews were much tougher than when Assad came into power.
Interesting.
Because Assad was a minority Muslim. So
Alawite.
Alawi.
Alawi. And what does that mean exactly?
I have
Just
no
more like
idea.
royalty status, like Hashemite, Alawite.
No,
but-
it's a Alawi. It's like a Shiite or a Sunni.
Yeah.
There's also an Alawi. He's an
Interesting.
Alawi.
He's Alawi.
And that's a minority Muslim. So his whole platform, his whole campaign to get elected,
Yeah.
to get into power, was that he's going to protect minority rights. And who are the minority rights that he's going to protect? The Jews.
Mm.
And so before he came into power, for somebody like my father, couldn't leave his house and go more than 10 kilometers without getting a visa because he's Jewish.
Mhm.
With Assad, he came and said, you know what, Jews, you're allowed to go travel Syria, have fun, enjoy this country.
The Alawi,
But-
were they trying to modernize Syria a little bit? Is that why they wear suits and have
No,
British wives?
They needed allies.
Right. Okay.
They're not Shiite, they're
Yeah,
not Sunnis.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean we were given every right. Obviously, we still face discrimination, crazy discrimination, violence, and I've been attacked personally. Nobody did anything, and Jews weren't allowed to immigrate out of the
As
country.
a child, you said?
As a child.
How were you attacked?
I was sitting in my grandfather's hosh, which is a yard outside in Syria, and there used to be stray cats, just like Israel. Playing with the stray cat.
Yeah.
A Palestinian, because in the Jewish quarter, a lot of Palestinians that were Arabs that left the British Mandated Palestine came. They took houses of the abandoned houses of the Jews, and the others were put in refugee camps next to the Jewish quarter to kind of prey on us if Israel ever acted in a certain way that our government didn't.
Oh, you're
like.
saying Arabs from Palestine
Yeah,
came
took
into
our
Syria
land.
to take
Yeah,
Jewish
dude.
homes in Syria.
The UN
Flip the
acknowledged
script.
$300 billion of Jewish assets in Arab worlds were taken from us.
Right.
And they took, and so I was,
Yeah.
I was sitting in my house. I was playing with the stray cats, and this kid comes over with his mother. He's probably a teenager. His mother instructs him, pick up a stone, just throw it at this kid's head. This Jewish kid in the yard. Took a stone, he chucked it in my head. I start gushing blood. My mother comes running out. She sees this. She's horrified.
Right.
She runs to the mukhabarat.
And then all the cats turn to the boy and go,
Get him! Get that.
because they were
Yeah, they just
they were
attacked
loyal to you. That would have been cool if they went and you like controlled them. But anyway,
I did.
Yahud controlled the cats.
Yeah, the Yehudi cat whisperer. Wallah.
Wait, so you got a rock to the head? My
Rock
God.
to the
How
head.
old
It's
were
like,
you?
Probably 3-4 years old.
Oh my God.
You remember this?
My mother is the one that tells me
Yeah,
the story. I don't have vivid memory,
Right,
of it,
right.
obviously. But
Wait, so you were a 3-year-old playing with stray cats?
4, yeah.
Interesting,
I
okay.
think that's what we did.
Right.
What else are you gonna do?
There's
I may be
cats.
4 or 5. I'm not.
Yeah,
You know.
kids play with stray dogs. Like, oh my god, how cute. So
You
it was
know, the
cats.
cats were so the Hoshel Basha.
Trying to understand the
My grandfather
landscape here.
lived, so it was a neighborhood within the Jewish quarter called Hoshel Basha. It was almost like a closed off corridor
Yeah.
with houses around it and a big yard in the middle.
Right.
And so there
Does
would
it look
be-
like Israel? Does it
And
look
like
like?
it does.
Yeah.
It does.
It does.
Like in Nachlaot, they have those like.
Yeah.
I'm just picturing it like
courtyards.
stone, like old Jerusalem style stone. kind of
It's
stuff?
very much like old Jerusalem.
Right,
Exactly.
right. Interesting.
Exactly.
So is that like a prosecutable offense?
That was my mother went, got the mukhabarat. They came, they looked at me. They were supposed to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
They spied on us. Obviously, you speak to any Arab, tell them mukhabarat, they'll
Mm-hmm.
shit their pants. And the mukhabarat looked at the mother and looked at the son. She said, "Hey, you know, what you did was really not nice. Don't do it again."
Mm-hmm.
All right, salamu alaikum.
My God.
Nothing
Peace be
happened,
upon
right?
you.
But we couldn't leave.
Right.
We were trapped
Right.
Was it
until
a,
'92.
Was it a affluent community, or because of your status was it hard? Because I know there's like the stereotype now.
No, we
of-
worked. We had businesses. We, you know, affluent like America, no, but you
That's
know,
what I'm
we
asking,
made a
yeah.
life. We made a
Okay.
life for each other. But you have to understand, my grandparents, great grandparents, were born in Syria.
Mhm.
So
So you were assimilated. You were
we
like
we
affiliated with
embedded
it.
within
Yeah.
that country.
Mhm.
Right.
And so we had the business. So there's somebody that would do the carving, all the art, the Arab art carving.
Did you have Christian friends that
Yes.
experienced similar
Yeah,
kinds of attacks?
So towards the end of our tenure in Syria, we moved to the city,
Mm-hmm.
into the Assa. And that building was just Jews and Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we were about to sell our home and, well, try to sell our home, nobody was buying the Jews' home,
Mm-hmm.
and leave the country, they asked every single Jewish person in that building, please, whatever you do not sell it to a Palestinian.
They asked who asked?
The Christian neighbors.
Said, "Oh, please don't. We don't want to."
We don't want them.
Oh,
because they were known in
They preferred their
Syria.
Jewish neighbors, but they didn't want
Yeah,
people.
they were violent. They were known for being violent in Syria. They were not given any respect, either from the Syrian Muslims didn't give them respect, to be honest with you, nor the Christians. And they were known to be, you know, not to sound like whatever.
You're
but
saying the Syrian Muslims didn't give the Palestinians respect?
no, nobody gave them respect. Even till today. If
Yeah.
my cousin went to Lebanon,
Yeah.
like before this war, probably
Yeah.
a year ago. He was sitting at the Beirut airport 2 years ago. He was sitting in the Beirut airport. A couple guys come in. They're like, "Hey, where are you from?" You know, he's talking Arabic. He's like, "Oh, I'm from Syria." They're like, "Okay, good. You're not Palestinian." They cannot tolerate them.
Interesting. What's the beef there? Why no solidarity?
They don't, because they never respected them. They don't like them. They have.
But I thought in terms of like pre-67, everyone talks about how the Palestinian identity formed in the 60s with Arafat
Yeah.
and PLO. Before that, they identified as Jordanians or Arabs, generally speaking. Do Syrians have a different identity?
No, it was Arabs. But here's what happened was
Yeah.
is in Lebanon, when the PLO came to Lebanon, when the Palestinians went to Lebanon, they created hell.
In the 60s.
In
They
the
assassinated the king, right?
They were the reason Lebanon basically lost its status as the Paris of the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Extreme.
Extremism. They brought
When
extremism.
did
to the
Hezbollah
region.
form in Lebanon?
I believe it was the early 70s.
I
if
see.
I'm
I think
not
Arafat got exiled there, I believe, and was like operating out
Lebanon?
of Lebanon. And I think a Palestinian
Yeah,
assassinated the
PLO,
king.
So they attributed the
believe.
rise of extremism and the moderation going down in
Yeah.
Lebanon to,
Yeah,
I guess you call it
100%.
Palestinian
the
terrorism.
if you're having a real conversation,
Extremism.
and I could show you my phones,
Yeah.
I get messages from Muslims in Lebanon currently that left, obviously, or in Syria and whatever, and they're all thanking me, or one
For
person
what-
apologized
For being outspoken and whatnot.
for being. They're like, "You're right. You're
Yeah.
saying the truth."
I got it. I got to get into that. I just want to wrap up your origin
Yeah,
story.
please.
Can I ask one more question? about it?
absolutely.
Is that part of the reason they don't take in refugees now?
The Arab nations.
The Arab nations?
No, yes and no.
Tell them, maybe.
Yes and no. In my opinion, I mean,
Okay.
I'm not
Yeah. And then we'll get back to the history.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
we're getting
yeah,
to like
'cause I wanna
when
know
you
that
left.
too.
I just want to
Yeah.
hear how that all
I just
happened.
finished that part.
Yeah.
No, but one reason, yes, is because they believe they're they're extremists, and they're scared of extremism in their country, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether
Yeah.
it's the Gulf states, or whether it's Egypt.
Right.
The other reason, a lot of these Arab countries do not accept them, and this is the same reason they do not give them citizenship
Jordan,
status,
Jordan, Egypt, whatever.
or their children
Yeah.
citizenship status, right? So if I was a Palestinian refugee in 1948 and I had 2 kids in Syria, both of them don't have citizenship. That reason is very simple. Once I give them citizenship, they lose that identity, and that identity can no longer be used to battle the Jews.
Right.
Okay.
The
So these people
Palestinian
are not people to them; they are weapons.
pawns.
And that's what I'm saying.
UNRWA
I
made-
feel bad for the Palestinians because they are being used as weapons by their cousins, by the Arabs
on
from day one.
Yeah. So on the one hand, though, you're saying that you attribute the hostility towards Palestinians from the general Arab world is because of the rise of extremism in Lebanon. But it's confusing because oftentimes we talk about a problem fundamentally that everyone supports this kind of extremism to fight Israel. You know what I'm saying? So the two things don't like.
Well,
Why
fighting
aren't
Israel's
they?
priority?
What's that?
Fighting Israel's priority.
What I mean is they don't want them in Lebanon because of extremism. But why wouldn't they then side with Israel to fight them?
Because they still share that same mentality that Jews should not be free in their land.
Okay. So in terms of the hierarchy of values,
Yes.
you
Exactly.
said what do you call it?
Palestinian than Jew.
Jewish land in this part of the world is more of an offense than extremism rising.
Yes.
But we don't want that problem. Use that extremism on the Jews.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
Very interesting.
Okay.
So, and then just to follow that and
Yeah.
put a button on it, if God forbid, if Israel never existed, that extremism might be used against the other Arab countries.
I mean,
that
it's,
possible?
it's
Like
shown right.
infighting.
It's not only possible; it's very likely. I mean,
Yeah.
you saw it in Syria. You see it between Iran and
You
Iraq
saw it in
for
Gaza in
many years.
2006. Like Hamas goes into Gaza and kills all the
Right.
political opposition.
Right.
But I think if Israel was never created, it would also affect the Jews there, right? Because they're still dhimmis,
Right.
so they're one
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
minorities that's going
Right.
to get attacked. If Israel was never created, Jews would have continued living in Arab countries, maybe,
Right.
but not out of choice, just
Right.
out of necessity. 'cause
And not in
where
an
else are they
ideal
gonna go?
scenario.
Yeah.
But it's 90. It's now 92. You've grown
92,
up-
Assad, the U.S. pressures Assad into reaching a treaty
Yeah.
to release the Jews.
Mhm.
There were headlines all over the country. Assad is releasing the Syrian Jews, the last remaining Syrian Jews.
Right.
So the first wave, my grandparents left, and 93 we
To
were
deal.
supposed to go.
No, I'm just kidding. No,
Deal, New Jersey. No, my grandparents left in
But
1992.
they did go to deal.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
we
so-
made our way there.
But you said
know, a
something
couple
fascinating.
years.
Sorry to interrupt. Like that, someone had children in Syria but couldn't go back or something like that.
That's my grandmother's story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, her story was she didn't meet a sister of hers
She didn't meet her sister until she was 45 years old.
because
Because of 48. I
In-
mean,
yeah,
my great grandmother, my grandmother's mother,
yeah,
went to Israel before 47
Right.
and settled at a kibbutz with her sister, and she had 2 kids at the time. My grandmother was still not born.
Mm.
She left her 2 daughters with her sister in Israel and said, you know what, I need to go back to Syria, pack up a few things, get my things in order, and I will come back to Israel.
BRB.
BRB'd it.
Mhm.
Yep. And when she got back, the war broke out. After the war broke out, Jews were no longer allowed out of Syria. So my great grandmother never got to see those 2 daughters or speak to them
Oh
ever
my
again.
God.
She passed away, never seeing them again. And my grandmother was born after
In Syria.
in
Syria,
Syria,
wow.
and she knew she had sisters, but she never. You can't speak to somebody in Israel. Everybody's tapping your phone in Syria. Mukhabarat's on us.
Yeah.
So you couldn't even say the word Israel on the phone.
Did you? Yeah. Oh,
She
wow.
never saw them. She never heard from them. When she came to the U.S., that was the first time. She went to Israel. She got acquainted.
Did you
with
know
her
you
2
had
sisters.
aunts in
I had no idea.
that you had aunts in
I
Israel?
had no idea.
Rocking a kibbutz.
No idea.
Your
whatsoever.
grandmother didn't know.
My grandmother knew.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Oh wow.
Can you imagine? Wow.
Yeah.
Along those lines, before we get into the rest of this, so you said it's 92 and they started and your family's one of the last families left in Syria.
Yeah.
I'm curious,
We left in '94.
how
They're very late to the party. It's like
No,
a Syrian thing.
how'd your family decide when so many people decided to go? Why did you guys decide to stay for so long?
It wasn't decided. It was who was getting permissions and plane tickets,
It's
and
politics,
people were helping.
bureaucracy.
It was a lot of politics.
So they
and
couldn't
bureaucracy.
get out.
It's not they could. If you pushed, you could have. My dad, his side of the family, were taking a little bit more time. We knew we were allowed out. So
Mhm.
people are like, okay, we're allowed to leave now.
Mhm.
It's okay. We're not gonna die tomorrow. We can leave after tomorrow. Let me finish up my business. Let me
Right.
finish this up. A lot like what's happening in America
Yeah.
right now, with
Well,
Jews
that's-
feeling very
I had a
comfortable.
conversation with
That's why I
I
asked.
had a conversation with a good friend this morning, and you ask yourself like, you're watching the Twitter feed, all good,
Yeah.
watching the Twitter feed, and you're seeing the clips. Someone's getting beat up in Belgium, New York, all this crazy stuff, and then you go back to like 1939, in your head, you're like, at what point do you just say, I gotta go? Or do you stay and fight? Like, what you ask yourself constantly, why didn't the Jews leave Germany? Why didn't they leave Poland? Why didn't they leave? And then you wonder, like, it's not so easy to determine when that threshold is being reached, when you cross that line.
Yeah, and you don't want to be too early, you know?
Well, probably better to be too early.
You're like sitting in Israel.
It is better, but you don't know. You're always like, I got more time. There's more time.
And my friends told me his grandfather came from being like a prominent businessman or whatever, had a whole job, everything middle class, to becoming a dishwasher here, and jumping down in class and to join the poverty line and become a lower, a working class like individual here and work his way back up.
We all had to start over. We all had to start over.
So yeah.
No, and you give it context. Like if you would have told me 10 years ago there's going to be people in Teaneck with Palestinian flags screaming from the river to the sea down West Englewood, I've been like, whoa.
Come on.
Why are we? But then it happens, and you're like, yeah, well, it's not. And you give it context.
If anything, the October 7th thing was kind of like, oh, it's happening. Everybody's like, it's happening. It wasn't like as gradual at that point. We were like, here it is.
Yeah.
All at once, and that was kind of a wake-up call for me, even as a grandchild of all Holocaust survivors on both sides. I was like, it's America. It's the West. They are reasonable.
But we're still here, is what I'm saying.
Correct. I'm leaving right after this pod. But,
where are you going?
So anyway, it's 92.
But wait, so it's 92 now. You finally get permission, and you're bouncing.
We're bouncing.
How many kids in the family?
So my dad, it was me, my two sisters, and my mom. Well, this is not 92 yet. It was me and my two sisters at the time.
Yeah.
My other sister was just born. My grandparents left first. My mother's parents, they left first with my aunts and my uncles on that side of the family. And then 93, Assad changes his mind. Nope, screw it. Jews, you leftovers, you're going to stay here. I remember my mother bawling her eyes out. Like, it's the same story that my great-grandmother experienced again.
Yeah.
And... Assad, I don't know what happened. Assad changed his mind again, allowed us out. We were out by 94. We came here.
JK.
I was like, I played you.
Yeah.
So it was just me, my father, my mother, myself, my two sisters, and my mother was pregnant with her fourth child at the time we landed in America.
Took a plane.
May of 1994. People call me a boat, but I did take a plane. My mother loves to point that out.
Right. To America. Why not Israel? It was just that.
And you really couldn't take a plane from Syria to Israel.
No, I know, but I'm saying in terms of convenience, you would think because you had that in your family, having moved in the past to Israel. Was it just like America's the promised land?
America, the Syrians in New York, those were the real people.
Like, bro, we're killing it here, man. Bro, you gotta come, bro.
They're the ones that fought for our freedom,
right.
And so we were allowed into America.
I see. They were advocating for you.
Yeah, big time.
This is a whole story we don't hear because we're hearing about like the Russian Jews in prison and communist Russia.
And the UJA helped us,
right? And Ashki side.
So were you welcomed as like honored guests, like celebrated, or were you welcomed a little bit like immigrants who you know?
When you got here,
like when the Russians came here, I feel like our community was happy, but also a little bit like prejudiced against them.
Look, I'm gonna take a lot of credit. I think we revived the community. I do. I think if you're here for 2-3 generations, you start losing the authenticity of where you're coming from. Right. When we came from Syria, we brought back a lot of authenticity. A lot of the stores on Avenue U, you go in, you get the coffee, you guys speak to the guy in Arabic. You get back that Syrian life, right? So I do think we added that spice to the community. Where we welcomed, yes, generally by community leaders and organizations, by people. Was there bullying? Was there, BS? Of course, where but yeah, generally we were very welcomed and
how was your English?
I did not speak any English when I came here.
Wow.
So
but was Arabic? You went to Brooklyn.
I went to Brooklyn. I spoke like almost zero English.
Wow.
I did speak Hebrew though.
No, okay.
Well, not speak. I knew how to pray Hebrew.
Right.
But yeah, no, I knew nobody, and I worked my ass off to get rid of my Syrian accent. Like crazy, every day practicing in front of a mirror. Like,
no kidding.
I do
but
not want
like you were Syrian, it was like really strong American,
It was Habibi, let me tell you.
Yeah. Habibi. Amazing. So that's just it's really that's a whole other side of the Jewish experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We come from this we have our Holocaust background narrative, Eastern European struggle, that kind of thing. And it's just this parallel.
But I'm going to blow your mind right now.
Yeah.
If you didn't know this, what makes you think those protesters on college campuses, what makes you think the general public in America know this?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah.
And so this is why The
I'm
pro-Palestinian
aware of
side-
it. I'm just saying firsthand. And
No, I know, but like the real factual stats of it, and everything that took place, how many people that were displaced, and so the pro-Palestinian side, very very smartly, played right into DEI, and they had to make the Jew the white man, because if the Jew was anything other than the white man, then this DEI focused advocacy.
And they jump up on the intersection. They're like, yes.
So we have to love them. We have to give them extra, space to commit terrorism. I guess. They are the oppressed.
They are immune from accountability. They get a pass as an oppressed group to do what they well please and become morally virtuous, deemed morally virtuous for doing so.
How intentional do you think that was?
I think it was extremely intentional.
And by who? By which powers that be?
By people like Rashida Tlaib, who set up, look, we're behind the eight ball. She set up Blacks for Palestine right at the same time Black Lives Matter was coming up.
Right.
And guess who collaborated a lot with Black Lives Matter and donated a lot to Black Lives Matter? Blacks for Palestine, Rashida Tlaib's organization, which was getting funded from, I'll let you, assume where the money was coming from. Probably, international sources and
Qatar, Iran.
Wallah da mullah in Qatar yumkin.
Yeah.
Why don't you want to say Qatar?
I do want to say
Yeah.
Qatar.
He wants us to play a little bit. Yeah.
I'm playing with you.
Foreign sources.
We're trying to make this fun.
and so, I mean, there's so many different areas to go into, but do you think there's this international effort to seed conflict in the West from hostile countries hostile to the U.S. using our own value system and political systems?
100%.
They call it dawa, right, on college campus.
Dawa, yeah, it's 100%.
Give us all of it, because you're plugged in a way, and and just to bring it up to how we met, because you're now, you started doing a lot of content. You've been doing content on Instagram, but you were doing stuff post October 7th and going to these actual protests and getting a feel for what it's about. So you sort of have a sense of what the people who know and what the people who don't know. Like, you've been exposed to the massive ignorance and, I guess, the nefarious players. Tell me a little bit about that.
I am, as I was saying, I'm convinced of their use of DEI. Now, I've been on this for the last 4 years. And I've almost started an organization to amplify the stories of the Jews in the Middle East and Arab countries in Iran.
You started
4 years. Yeah.
What was it called?
Uprooted.
Uprooted. Okay.
And it really didn't go places. People were like, what are you doing? We're not victims. Why do we need to tell our story? Oh, there's a million organizations fighting anti-Semitism. And I was blowing the whistle on anti-Semitism coming from the left and DEI groups over and over again and saying, listen, if you guys want to really fight this anti-Zionist anti-Semitism, you need to amplify voices of Jews from Arab countries, because their existence completely tears a hole in the entire fabric of bullshit that the Palestinian side is proposing, right? Their entire premise is that you believe that the Jew is a white supremacist. That is why at every protest, at the Palestinian protest, when there's a counter-Jewish protester, what do they say? Go to Poland. Go to Germany. It is so entrenched and ingrained in that narrative that our existence, and something I've been planning to do for a long time, was do an all-Arabic pro-Israel rally and to counter them. Our existence completely starts tearing holes in that story. And so now we're trying to jump over them in the DEI caliber. We were not only oppressed, but we were oppressed by you. The people are saying that you're oppressed, and we're not white. We're brown, just like you.
Do you see any danger in playing that game? Because I've said before that it's not that we're denying Jews. Some Jews are, quote, white. Like, I'm not trying to score points with DEI to say, no, look, we're brown. We're also all these other colors that are acceptable. Like, so to me, to play that game is kind of like yucky. I'm trying to
I'm with you, but I don't think it matters.
Yeah. I know what you're doing. Yours is like a strategic position to basically undermine the DEI claim, but I don't want to give credence and credibility to the idea that being browner makes you necessarily better or more virtuous.
No, not at all. But that's only one of the points, right? The first point is you're underdoing the DEI claim, but the second point is more relevant, right? And that is, look, when white supremacy was really the biggest threat, right? These neo-Nazis were really the biggest threat against Jews in America. Who were the ones that stood up and spoke out? And honestly, thank God for them, with the Ashkenaz and the Ashkenazi community, who's done so much building organizations to fight anti-Semitism.
Sure.
They really did.
Yeah.
And they were able to really effectively fight back against neo-Nazi and white supremacist anti-Semitism.
That's true. Yeah.
Even
good
till
point.
this day, if you see neo-Nazi
Yeah,
marches,
yeah.
the biggest anti-Semite will call them out and say, "Oh, this is completely not acceptable."
So they were successful in correctly portraying the evil of anti-Semitism in the form of white
Right.
supremacy.
Why? Because they experienced it firsthand. They experienced Hitler firsthand.
Right, and we said now we're going to make a concerted effort in the culture, and now it's true. No one's going to say I'm a Nazi unless it's actually coming back now. But unless you're Nick Fuentes, you're not going to go out and that term is the only way to use it effectively is to use it as a pejorative to
Right.
call Israel Nazis. But
Yeah.
it's we've been effective in making that exactly what we don't want. The antithetical to goodness.
The Ashkenazi community.
Yes,
was.
has done a good
And
job.
now-
And now you're saying
And so, but the reason, now you have to ask, right? It's like, okay, they did it great. How and why were they so effective? They were so effective because
Spielberg,
they
man, he's a good
firsthand,
director. Yeah.
they firsthand experienced
Yeah.
the Holocaust. It was their story that they were speaking about from the pits of their stomach, from
Yeah.
their heart, the story of their mother, the story of their grandfather, their cousin. It was relatable to the American people. Some Joe Schmo in the Midwest would hear this man and go, his mother went through this. This is a real danger. This
Yeah.
is a real threat. If those same voices are now fighting a type of anti-Semitism that, they haven't had real firsthand experience with, it doesn't come off authentic.
Right.
And they playing right into the hand of the pro-Palestinian side where they're saying, think about it. Everybody like, well, we need a safe place. We need a safe haven. After the Holocaust, we needed somewhere. It was Israel.
And you don't like that argument, or you find it to be
Disingenuous,
Yeah.
because that's not why we have Israel. I mean, sure, we need a safe place, but that's not why we have our Holy Land. That's not why it's important to us, let me say. That's what I meant to say. That's not why it is the most important, and that is not why it's an ancestral
And that's not why
homeland.
Israel's owed to us.
No.
It's because it's ours.
It's
and then we're indigenous, is what you mean.
So if now
Sorry,
you
Michael.
bring out Jewish voices of Arab countries to speak out, they can have the same argument that the Ashkenazi community had in the earlier 60s and 70s, right? And they can say, or whatever, they can say, look, this type of anti-Zionist anti-Semitism was the main contributing factor to our displacement from Arab countries in Iran. This caused the ethnic cleansing of 850,000 to 1 million Jewish refugees. If this continues in this country, you are threatening us with the same thing that displaced us. And that is a firsthand powerful message that goes over the DEI, goes over any of the other bullshit they're trying to throw at us. And I think it would actually be recepted very well with
You
others.
received, yeah.
Received.
Well, to
Sorry.
your point, I think a manifestation of how much the Ashkenazi argument in this case has failed is they've twisted it around on us.
Yeah.
They've said, no, you're the ones doing a Holocaust now. You're the ones doing a genocide.
they stole the
That's how
tragedy.
big of a failure it's been.
Yeah.
Not only that, they used it. They said, look, you're admitting you're from Germany and Poland. So what? You went through a horrible Holocaust. So what gives you the right to come into my land, you Europeanist, or whatever they want, like a European colonizer, and come and take my land? Just because you suffered, why do I have to suffer?
I hear that point, and I just think the counter to that, first of all, is that Jews are not, if you want to go indigenous, like Israel's Jewish roots are evident in the ground.
Yeah, of course.
And so you can obviously make the case that Jews need a safe haven, and this idea that it was just some great displacement and there wasn't a massive war that was declared on the Jewish state. This idea that white settler colonialist European Jews came and just completely displaced everybody and that was it, and as opposed to the fact that there were two peoples there and there was land purchasing and all this kind of other stuff which we can get into. But I hear you that if anything, what the Jewish Arab community, the Jews from the Arab countries are saying is that the narrative of displacement, of ethnic cleansing, that applies to us. We are the oppressed ones directly from this part of the world.
Yes.
As opposed to the victorious Jews that have now come in won 48 and came in and built up Israel from Europe. There's also a whole other side to the story that dispels the DI narrative as exclusively applied to Palestinians.
100%. And I mean, I'll give you two narratives, and you tell me which one sounds more appealing to you. You ready? The first narrative is the we had the Holocaust, we left, we needed a safe haven, we came.
And that's Rashida Tlaib saying, it's just
we
that
accepted them.
it's just that we did accept them. We took them in, and it pains me that Jewish pain and suffering had to come at the pain and suffering of my people.
The second more important, more powerful narrative, in my opinion, with this type of anti-Zionism. Not that both narratives aren't true and everything, but is this: the majority of Jews that live in Israel today, reside in Israel today, are themselves or are descendants of Jewish refugees of Arab countries in Iran. So that is a majority population. So a more powerful narrative is this: the Grand Mufti of Palestine came and made the Holocaust happen it collaborated with Nazis and made the Farhud. Those Iraqis fled to Israel. At that time, it was a British mandated Palestine. In Syria, 30,000 Jews. These million Jews that were displaced by Arab violence went back to their original homeland that no longer was controlled by the Ottoman Empire and that was being established as a land for them. And why shouldn't they deserve the land? If you argue that Palestinians should own a land when there was never a country of Palestine because they lived there, then my argument goes to why aren't Jews getting land in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon and in Egypt? In Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia when they were established by the
pyramids. We probably should get some of that.
And so that narrative then goes, so what you're telling me is I was displaced by these people and now they're telling me I'm oppressing them and they want to displace me again from the river to the sea. Where do they want me to be?
Right. I mean, it's so funny because you have to just untangle so much, because now the narrative is the Jews went through the false narrative. Jews went through the Holocaust and now they've become the Nazis. They're using that whole tactic. Look at what they're doing. How could they having gone through them, projecting their own trauma and doing this? But now if you really untangle that, it's Jews were ethnically cleansed from Arab countries. In fact, not falsely, actually expelled. And if you want to make any claim to land in the Middle East, it's Jews are owed property back all over the Middle East, not only just Israel, but in Baghdad, in Syria, all over these places. And I guess you could say Jews are also owed property and assets in Poland and Germany and reparations. All of these types of things. They're the ones that are culpable, that have been responsible for Jewish suffering and Jewish tragedy. Okay. And yet Jews and Israel are the ones exclusively called the oppressor of this part of the world. It's pretty amazing that narrative is the one that wins out.
It's offensive. It's like
Michael,
it's
you're
like
thinking.
Looking and
I'm thinking then, okay. If you follow that though, then the Palestinians who were displaced, if the Jews need a safe haven to go to,
careful.
No. I'm wondering if you follow that all the way through, then shouldn't the Palestinians who were displaced be taken care of in some capacity also?
Yeah, they should.
I'm asking. I'm not
100%.
Yeah.
100% Palestinians deserve self-determination in Jordan. That was what was split up to them in the Balfour Declaration. Now, I'm not saying that we wouldn't give up land, or maybe we give up land, or maybe we do a two-state solution. I don't care. It's not relevant. It is a fake argument that's not solving the conflict, and because the conflict is not about land.
Yeah.
We all consistently say this conflict is not about land.
What's that phrase you
and
said
then
at
we
the
jump to, well, we agree with a two-state solution. Well, you just said it's not about land. So what do you mean you agree to a two-state solution? You're not being real. You're not being genuine.
What's the phrase you said? The Jews in the first
Khaybar Khaybar Yahud.
Khaybar Khaybar Yahud. This is just like it's not about land.
It's not.
And if it is, it's about Jordan,
ideology.
because the original partition was Transjordan and Israel, right? But what's his name said? Yousef, son of Hamas. What's his name?
Mousab. Yeah.
Mousab. What's his name? Mousab Yousef?
No, Hussein. I believe it's Hussein Mousab. I'm not on.
I think it's Mousab, but son of Hamas.
The Green Prince.
He's like, when we were born, we carried the Jordanian passport. That is what we had. There is no such thing as Palestine. You do not even know what Palestine is. I love him. So aggressive. You know what he reminds me of? You know Dexter, the show Dexter? That show where like the guy was born with a brain, like he
Dexter's Laboratory.
He was a killer. Dexter, he was a killer who killed serial killers.
Yeah. Not
so
Dexter's
he was
Laboratory.
used for good.
No,
Dexter the show on Showtime was about a guy.
There's two. There's a cartoon. That's what I thought.
Dexter's
we're talking about with his brain though.
That his father did a scan of his brain and was like, oh my God, it's the brain of a sociopath. It's the brain of a killer. So I'm going to use him for good. And he used him to kill other serial killers.
That's what.
And Mousab,
I think
or whatever his name is, I'm getting son of Hamas. He's like, born this way, but now he's used to attack other terrorists. And he's saying, watch my interview now. You're not even fit to be a mother. Because Abe is a self-appointed journalist. She doesn't even know anything. She self-appoints to come to this part of the world. I was born here. She praises Armudi. He killed 5 people, murdered 5 people, and she calls him a hero.
He speaks to me.
Like,
no, not like really.
Oh.
But like his way speaks to me. When I saw that interview, I'm like, finally. I love this. This is what we need. This is what the Jews
I feel like
need
there's
to
a
do.
part. Yeah.
Do you think he's effective though?
Yeah, I think
yeah.
he's
You think
hellishly
so?
effective.
Yeah.
Unapologetic. He called out those on Dr. Phil.
Oh, that was beautiful.
You do not, and I will not agree to it, because there is no such thing as Palestine. And the reason I keep fighting and saying what this is, because you will not condemn October 7th until this day. You support terrorism. And they're just like, I object to colonialist rhetoric and language. And he's just calling out the phoniness.
So, to your point, though, something that's bothered me through this entire media ecosystem post October 7th, and you mentioned this also, though, is are we just playing into this game of no, we're the bigger victims. We are the bigger victims. It is us in the end. Also, it is still us.
It sounds like it, but not.
Yeah.
Because I say this all the time. I'm like, look, we were victims. We're not victims. We never lived as victims. We are resilient, but we have been victimized. We were victimized. Doesn't mean we're victims today. We're not Palestinians. They'll never stop being victims. We have been victimized, and we should talk about the victimization we experience. And now that it's coming out, the world's going to know about it. I don't care if they don't want to hear it. I'm not telling you I'm a victim. I'm not telling you, oh, help me. I'm so poor and impoverished, and I left Syria, and I was attacked. No, I came here. I worked my ass off. I built a business. I built a life. I'm not a victim. 0% victim here.
But you're establishing your own sense of justice by doing just that and speaking out. It's not like we're not actually demanding give us back Baghdad.
No.
We're saying leave us alone.
Yeah, I don't want back.
Like, don't owe us anything but to leave us alone in peace, to thrive and prosper and cure cancer in Israel, because they do that. Build cell phones.
Once in a while. They create.
My question is, talk a little bit about the, you're saying you have friends, Muslim friends who are texting you like, thanks, man, for what you're doing. And I do find that there's this struggle that a lot of people, like we obviously don't want to broad brush and call and stereotype and call all groups one thing that think one thing. And then there's this debate about the Muslim world and about extremism, and is it baked into the cake within Islam versus like other religions that have struggled, that have reformed, the argument over moderates versus extremist elements. To what extent does the Palestinian civilian population support Hamas?
Yeah.
They're cheering on October 7th around these cars. Everyone has this like free Gaza from Hamas mantra, but I'm like, you take out Hamas, are we left with a peace-loving population? I would love to think so, but is that wishful thinking? No. But you're plugged into people who are like, love what you're doing. So does that, how do you square that circle?
I think first you have to separate Muslim and Palestinian. You have to separate Muslim and Palestinian.
I'm curious, because
it's never separated, but listen,
Abraham, speak to us.
You do have to separate it. And so now we got to look at Muslims. Muslims, is 1.2 billion Muslims in the entire world.
Yes.
So even when we see the vocal Muslims, and they could be a minority of even 10%, let's say, that's still 120 people, 120 million.
So Brigitte Gabriel said this,
It's a big, big minority. And so they're the ones screaming. They're the ones now.
Meaning, even if a minority of the Muslim population in the world is radical, if it's 25% of a billion, you're dealing with something.
Right. But I don't think it's.
But it's also multicultural. There's different Muslims across the world that are very different cultures.
So this is where I'm going with this. And most Muslims today, at least, depends on Shiite or Sunni, and how radical they want to define their books, and what the Quran actually says. The Quran, there's one prayer that does at the end of it go against Jews and Christians, right? There's no doubt about that. But you know what? I'm being fair. Every single religion has violence baked into the cake of it. I mean, are we going to lie to ourselves and say our Torah doesn't have any violence? No, of course it does. And you know what? Our Torah isn't turn the other cheek. It's if somebody comes to kill you, you kill them first. And so, sure, it's in their books. But as human beings, as people, most Muslims that I know want the same things that you and I want. They want to go to work. They want to earn a living. They want to buy a house. They want to buy a car. And they just want to be left the hell alone. And they're not outspoken because they don't have, at the current, a lot of support from the leadership of the Muslim world, and it's very cultural. Think about it like
Who
the
is
Jewish
the leadership
community.
in the Muslim world? When you say
Depends on your sect, and then depends on who your sheikh is, who the mosque leader is in your area.
Even in the United States, you're talking
Yeah,
about?
it's very like the Jewish community. Imagine you right now go out and say, you know what, I'm pro-Palestinian.
Yeah.
Now go to your local synagogue. What do you think? You think you're gonna be greeted with hugs and kisses?
No, not necessarily, unless it's in like the Reform conservative
Right.
world. They'll love that. But what I mean is, it's very different to say I'm pro-Palestinian versus in a Muslim community to say, oh, you mean to be pro-Israel? Is that,
To be moderate.
to be
To
moderate.
be like, let's
Moderate.
come up with a reasonable solution. here.
Like not supporting Hamas. Like
No,
it seems like a very different position than me being pro-Palestinian.
and you're seeing a lot of people not support Hamas. It just you have to understand there's a lot of power coming from the mosques and coming from the sheikhs. And when they're giving
There's a discrepancy
sermons,
between even the views.
100%. In Saudi Arabia, did you know it was illegal to fly a Palestinian flag?
No.
If you go to Mecca to the
Kaaba,
Hajj,
the Hajj. It's called
Or-
the Kaaba.
Kaaba, whatever you want to call it.
What
The
do you
Hajj
think?
is what you do.
The Hajj is what you do. What you go around
Yeah.
the center square is called the Kaaba.
You know a lot about this stuff. I didn't
Somebody-
realize.
I'm Muslim, Michael. You knew
So-
this.
there
No,
was
but
Well,
that's
he converted on October 6th to Islam. Awful. He felt
Mabruk.
so bad. He felt
Mabruk.
so bad.
It's called the Kaaba.
Did
right?
you see the video of the guy holding the Palestinian flag to pray for Palestine at the time, and the police coming in and arresting him
in Saudi Arabia?
in Saudi Arabia?
Wow.
They do not want this type of ideology to penetrate. They've been at mosques. They banned, and this I saw, they banned prayers for Palestine at certain times
In Saudi Arabia.
in Saudi Arabia. They've banned mosque leaders to spread hate in a lot of different mosques in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
The question is why? Is because the actual leaders of Saudi Arabia want to modernize. Why?
Modernize.
Because they don't want to be overtaken by some terrorist organization that's going to kill them, and they like money and power.
There's also a regional battle going on
Iran.
between Iran
Iran,
and
yeah, yeah.
Saudi Arabia.
And they
Yeah.
also want to plan for the next 30, 100 years.
Right.
If the oil runs out.
How do
they
you
wanna-
do that? How do you do that and not stir up a revolution with your own people when, for the past 20 or 30 years, your mosque leaders and your sheikhs, who you, the king, has to listen to as well, have been preaching against the Jews and against Israel? So imagine you are a king in this theocracy, and you're coming against a position that has been taken by a mosque leader or a sheikh. Your people are going to be like, what's going on with this kingdom? Are they corrupt? Is something happening? So they have to moderate their people's view of Jews and Israel and whatever through the mosque. So it became illegal to talk about Jews. This is a 10-year process. And now I think last week Saudi Arabia is like, hey, we're normalizing ties with Israel again.
And from what I've heard, what Saudi Arabia is hoping for is for Israel to do the job in Gaza, get rid of the extremists, and then they can come in and they
Yeah.
can say, we actually know how to moderate a culture. We've done it, but we can't do it with Hamas here.
And my question is like you're saying you made a distinction between Palestinian and Muslim, but are you saying Palestinian by extension as an extension of Iran?
No. I'm saying Palestinian. The distinction that I made is a lot of people put Palestinian as Muslim, right? If I go against a Palestinian, let's assume I say I hate all Palestinians,
Yeah.
which I never said.
Yeah.
But let's say I said that, they'll be like, "You're Islamophobic." Why am I Islamophobic? I cursed out one made up ethnicity, Palestinian. Fine. I cursed them out. I didn't curse out Islam.
Yeah.
Why am I Islamophobic? Because they have to conflate those two identities together to get the broader support.
Right. But you're saying in the
But they're
actual
not.
Muslims in the region that you're in touch with,
They
do
don't
not.
like them.
Interesting. That's
They-
interesting.
well,
But
They
don't
just like them
all-
more than the Jews. Like, that's about
right,
it.
it's just that. But they just hate Jews more.
Yeah.
But not you. If you're,
I
in
mean, the-
but you're saying they're texting you like, love what you're doing.
No, those.
Wink, wink,
Again,
nod, nod.
We're talking. I'm talking people, and then you're talking governmental powers, right? When I'm talking about is they don't like them and they hate them, these are all governmental powers. The people do discriminate against Palestinians as well as much as they discriminate against Jews. Do I think if I go to Syria and there's 100 people today, if I go to Syria today, what would happen to me? The government would destroy me. They'd probably kill me, charge me with treason. If I go to Syria today and I'm sitting with a cafe of Arabs and I tell them,
get
hey,
along.
I'm the Jew that came back home, as long as these Arabs aren't one of the Palestinians or one of the extremists,
They'd say, Habibi, we love you."
Habibi, ta, come, coffee,
So
cafe,
it's so,
hookah,
how
this.
is there such a discrepancy between the average member of a population, which has so much in common with Jews? I always find it so fascinating how Muslims and Jews
Very.
culturally are so similar. We pray, we fast,
Community.
we are monotheistic very staunchly, like community, marriage, text,
Very
all
into
these
text
things.
and
I mean, when I watch, like, sometimes you watch like a sheikh giving a speech or talking about the Quranic verses. We have the same thing, and giving a shear. It's like we have so much in common. It's like a sibling rivalry. It's almost the closer we are, the more there's like this tension. But I just don't understand why it's not so easy to get along. From an idealistic perspective, it's like you're sitting in the cafe, Habibi, welcome, and yet the governments that represent these people have to have this ideological. You're saying it goes back to the original.
Goes back to the
and it's like baked into the cake to have to hate.
Baked into the cake that the Jew cannot be the leader.
Mm-hmm.
We are not going to let you take already colonized Arab land.
Right.
The Arabs colonized.
They say that about Spain too. I just heard.
They do. They want to take Spain.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's a very extreme faction of them.
No, it is. But there's this concept that any land. Did you see
ever
Gad
had a
Saad on
mosque.
Rogan?
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah, he's right. Gad Saad said, any Arab, there is a belief in. If I grew up in Lebanon as a Lebanese Jew, Joe, this is how he talks. But he said, any land, there's a belief theologically that any land that was once Islamic and conquest must remain that way forever.
Yes.
And it's like a Quranic verse that it has to. So now even parts of Spain that were once under imperialist, like once under Islamic control, need to return to that. So that's animating a lot of this too.
Because it's part of the religion. I mean, the idea is we're trying to. The originals of the religion, how do they expand? Through caliphate.
Right.
If they have a rule that would undo the expansions that were gained by their leaders, it wouldn't look too good on them. And two, the whole idea of Islam is that you're surrendering to the will of Allah. So if I get this one land already to surrender for the will of Allah, it's surrendered. How are we going to let it go back? If we're letting it go back, we're making the sin.
It's a spiritual affront.
Right.
That's tough. It's tough to overcome.
It's tough.
The belief in that is
listen,
tough to
I think
undo.
there is a possibility through bridge building. I really do.
Talk about that.
But I think it's going to come through mutual success and money. Honestly, I think Donald Trump hit the nail on the head when he was talking about peace.
Abraham, speak to us. Yeah.
Thank you, Donnie.
Yeah.
Donnie hit it on the head. It's not
How
even
so?
political with regards to how to make peace and how to get coexistence. And it's only through success. So I'm working with an organization now, Mala, the Muslim American Leadership Alliance.
I saw a video
right?
you did with someone, yeah.
And we're going to
You went
continue
to Nova
working
with
together.
someone?
Yep,
Yeah.
with their deputy
Nova.
director. They're very courageous. They adopted IRA's definition to anti-Semitism on behalf of their organization. And I want to create a program with them and leaders in my community where we're going to start offering jobs and mentorships, special jobs and mentorships to Muslims and people who join their organization. Because you want people to go to people who are trying to push moderate stuff. And why would this Muslim kid come and join Mala? Or why would some other kid come and join? I want to start this initiative with them so that the first entry that they're coming for may not be because they're interested in this organization. Maybe they want that cool internship that's only available through Mala or that cool mentorship. That will draw people. People will listen. People will learn and become moderate over time. And so what challenged them? What brought them to the table? Success. The same is true in Arab countries and other parts of the world. If people have success, like in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they have money. They're rich. They don't want war. They don't want conflict. Lebanon, Syria, they're broke. They don't care. People use them. Syria, the Syrian population right now, it's honestly sad. Actual Syrians don't live in Syria anymore. It's all Iranians, rich Iranians. The Syrian population in Syria are walking without shoes because they can't even afford anything with the hyperinflation that happened there because of Iran. If you incentivize with success and with building, you can reach peace. But if we're going to keep on with the bullshit and the lies of, yes, these people deserve a two-state solution. They deserve the West Bank. They deserve Gaza. Give it to them immediately. If we're going to keep going with that statement, then why don't you give it to them? You're unfair. Then I will say with them, you are unfair by not giving them that land. If it is theirs, they deserve it, and you're not disputing that, then who the hell are you to hold it back from them?
Well, we have this conversation all the time about, like, whether from the left or the right, the status quo doesn't work. You have to make up your mind, in a sense. Otherwise, the status quo leads to more bloodshed. Either you're a far lefty and say full 67 border, get rid of every single settlement. I think that would be the most dangerous thing you could possibly do. Proof is in the pudding. Or you're a hard right-winger and you say, what? You have to. I don't know what you do.
I'm not any
You
winger.
say give them
I'm just honest.
give them Jordanian citizenship, and that's it.
No, it's not about land. Is my argument. It's never about land. Why am I even talking
So
about
you're saying.
two states?
So what's you're saying? You're saying that is
What
that
I'm
whole
saying is
conversation's an illusion.
The whole conversation is bullshit. It's complete illusion. Why don't we talk about how do we de-radicalize this population that 80% of agreed with what happened on October 7th? It's not. You want to give them land?
Yeah.
I want to give somebody who agrees with a terrorist who murdered and put a child in the oven a piece of land to rule over, more territory, and we're shooting ourselves in the leg. Nobody wants to have this conversation. The real conversation is how do we re-educate? How do we help in that? And you know who can help with that? Saudi Arabia. And I do believe that's the way to peace. I think those Gulf states are going to come in and try to re-educate the population in Gaza, re-educate the population in Hebron to learn how to be motivated by success and not murder and terrorism.
Do you think like Mala is perceived by the Muslim community, Islamic community, the way like we perceive Jewish Voice for Peace? Or as like, look at you guys, you're all trying to work with the Jewish community, and the way, do you think it's perceived that way? What's been your take from people you've worked with there?
I don't know what the general Muslim population may perceive it as today.
But does he come up against
He does. I'm sure he does. Oh yeah, he does. Yeah. I'm sure he does. But the guy that's behind it, which is one of the directors, the one I know, Dan Khan, is a guy of strong character.
Pakistani?
A Pakistani, yeah. Strong character. And
it's very common.
I don't think he's going to bow to that pressure, and he understands that what he's doing here is building a real Muslim organization that's going to champion rights for Muslims, that's going to advance the general freedom of religion of Muslims, but also not at the same time, me and him had a conversation about, if you, the Muslim organization, do not battle these protesters, they're ruining the name of Islam. They are going out there screaming at people that they're Islamophobic because they're cursing out Hamas or the extremism and saying what they did was completely wrong. They're looking at people saying, "Oh, you're Islamophobic for saying extremist Islam ruined Muslim countries." But the Muslims themselves agree with that. These people are out of their goddamn minds.
That's what's so confusing.
So Mala called them out on a video with me and Dan. He's like, actually, I think it's Islamophobic to support Hamas. It's Islamophobic and anti-Muslim to support that extremism and justify it in the name of Islam. If I do not believe Muslims and
bigotry
Islam,
of low expectations.
If I do not believe Islam is represented by this, then Islam needs to be speaking out against this.
Right.
Well, what you're really asking is moderate Islam inauthentic Islam? Is an authentic Muslim someone who despises Jews?
No.
That's a question. That's a question
Not my
I
opinion.
have.
Listen,
Or just the anti-Semitism. You're talking about Palestinian versus Muslim, and anti-Semitism in the Muslim world more broadly. People talk about in these countries that that it's just a default. Gad Saad talked about it on Joe Rogan, how hating Jews is just as common, or saying inshallah, we should destroy the Jews is like as common as the heat in Texas. Ein Hersiali spoke about it in Somalia, that the worst thing you could call someone is a Jew.
Yes.
I heard Kumail Nanjiani, he was in an interview, he was like, thought it was right in Pakistan, it's normal. It's like a normal society, whatever. And there's doctors and lawyers and everything else. But also you're kind of raised to hate Jews.
Yes.
It's just kind of a thing.
Oh, they don't like us. They call us Shafit. In Syria, they called us Shafit Yehudi. A piece of Jew. Like a piece of shit, piece of Jew.
So I'm saying I admire this effort. Of course I want it, and I want it all to be true, that it's possible. But then you hear about the scale and the deep rootedness of anti-Semitism in the culture, and you're just like, I feel hopeless.
It does. I don't have a problem with somebody, laughing and saying, "Oh, Jew." I think of him less. That's fine. That's fine to me. I can sit with you and you can tell me I think you view less because you're a Jew. Right. My only problem comes when you start discriminating against me and using violence against me because I'm a Jew.
So you're not going to work on thoughts and feelings.
I'm not working on that. It's not my. I'm not trying to change your entire. As I said, every religion has something problematic in it. Okay, are we stoning people who are mechalelei Shabbat?
No.
Okay. At the end of the day, every religion, it's just about how you express it. And I don't think Muslims today want to live with Allahu Akbar, to take the sayf, the sword, and start slaughtering every Jew in America. I do think there's a major population, a major risk
significant.
that they could become that in the future if the actual strong moderate Muslims don't step up and fight back against this extremism. There is a risk that this extremism takes over the religion.
Be like, look, I hate Jews as much as the next guy, but let's just relax.
Like, yeah, leave me alone. You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. That's the life I like.
Obviously, I think the whole problem on the left in this country is this idea of a standard of getting rid of racism until it's out of everybody's hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And it's like the only thing we can really focus on are actions.
That's
actions are what are prosecutable, and that's what needs to be stopped.
That's
and hopefully with time, but like you could say, it's rooted in people's thoughts and feelings towards other people.
Sure.
Enjoying widespread support. This refusal to condemn October 7th in large parts of, we don't see it in a way that I'd like to see it.
We don't. And I'm very disappointed
Yeah.
in not seeing more Muslims speak out
Yeah.
against October 7th. I think it's a major mistake on their part. I know that a lot of them, and again, a lot, the 30 that messaged me.
Yeah. Well, you have relationships with actual. We're not talking in the abstract.
Yeah, and listen, and the people that I lived with and I grew up with, and my mom had friends from Syria that moved to the U.S. and still came to our house and had lunch, right? And they were all Muslims.
Right.
So we had a somewhat,
Rapport.
livable arrangement with the actual person on the ground.
Right.
But it doesn't, if that person decided to kill me, it doesn't mean that person doesn't open his book at night and says, God curse all the Jews, right? Like, I'm sure he can say that. But as long as I believe my religion over their religion, then I really don't care what they have to say about me.
You want it to get to the level where Christians believe we're all going to burn in hell.
Right.
They do.
They do. Do they not?
They totally do. But they're not going to do anything about it here on earth.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, what about why, and
the evangelicals, we want all the Jews to be in
why?
Israel. And
Why?
then Jesus comes back, and then they better do something. Then the plot twist, it's Game of Thrones, and it's like, all right.
So that's
time to
where I
accept.
think,
Got 'em.
so that's where I think it's unfair, and I'll be very honest, to put that onus only on the Muslims. Take that hatred out of your heart from the Jew and take it out of your prayers from your Quran and take it out of everything. But so why aren't you doing it with the Christians? Why aren't you doing it with us too?
Well, because we're facing actions in part of the world that are problematic.
So what do we need
The
to change?
hostility towards Jews, towards Israel, is coming disproportionately from one community, not another,
Because of action.
because of actions.
And so we need to show that
You can hold on to you can hold on what's sacrosanct to you textually and religiously and spiritually, as long as your fist doesn't meet my head, you can swing
and
it.
as long as you're a nice person, look,
Yes.
they're nice, they understand, I'm Jewish, you can believe what you want, it's in your book, that's fine. As long as your actions and your behavior and the way you're dealing with me is equal and normal and without violence and tolerant, I love that word. It's a word of the day
Not
for me,
accepting,
man.
but tolerant.
Tolerant.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I'm not trying to make you love me.
Right.
I can't make you love me.
I
It's
can't
a
make you love
it's
me
a fool's quest.
if you don't. That's the Jewish. That's a song.
Sing it.
What?
You made me sing a song. It's your turn.
I can't make you love me
Do you know the song?
if you
I have no
don't.
idea. I'm an Arab.
Habibi. Very interesting. I mean, it's an interesting angle you're saying because, in a way, it's such a ridiculous ask to say you have to give up. Not to say, like, stop. Like, it seems silly to say, like, you can keep your anti-Semitism. But in a way, you're saying, look, whatever problematic stuff is in the text, is in the practice, is in this, like, we draw the line at actions. And so, therefore, that's what we have to change. And you want to change that by partnering with people to make sure that there's that barrier that people won't cross.
But the only way you can change that positively and stop the action
Yeah.
is to be honest about it.
Yes.
And be honest about my perception, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm gonna go and say like, listen, I think your Al-Aqsa, we have no right to be there. It's completely dishonest.
Yeah.
Our Beit HaMikdash was on the Al-Aqsa.
Yeah.
It's built over our Beit HaMikdash. I have a right to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling you to knock it down. I'll tell you I can't even technically, according to my rabbi, even walk up there if I wanted to today, right? I don't care. Leave it there. But do not deny my reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to allow you to deny my reality so we can have a conversation about peace.
Right.
If the contingency to having this conversation about peace is me denying my reality and bending my deen to you, then go screw yourself. We can go to the sword. Right? Arab, baby. I know. Listen, the Ashkenaz, they didn't get it.
I went, hey, I write a strongly worded email. I will write a strongly worded email. You say go to the sword. The thing is, what you're really fundamentally saying is, while all this talk and chatter is centered around political issues or geopolitical issues and international relations, at the core of all this, what's really going on behind the curtain, the real show is theological, and spiritual
Yes.
and religious and ideological. That's really what's going on and animating all of this.
Yes, 100%.
Zohar Atkins, I heard on the 1840 podcast today,
Yeah.
he was talking about we've sort of, as globally, we've sort of replaced religion with secularism. And so it's, in modernity, it's the only way we know how to talk about this together.
Right.
Those are the only terms we can use,
Right.
but they really aren't the proper terms for what's going on right now.
Right.
But you can't go on CNN and have this conversation because there's no place for it there.
They
but,
lack the
but,
language.
But this is, I've said this from the beginning, I do think this is the proper way to be talking about it. So
It's
really
only
good to hear
real
from you.
conversation.
What is the
Appreciate it. Thank you.
But the thing is also, we have to also, like, Israel itself, in a way, a strong case to be made to the secular world about Israel is that it's also modern and secular and tolerant and multicultural. So you can have this conversation about why it's relevant on religious grounds, and what we're fighting about is ideological and religious. Well, at the same time, yeah, I mean, we talk about rights and property rights and the establishment of a secular society within Israel too. So I think that's where it also gets confusing.
Yeah, but but a secular society in Israel can't look like it looks like in America because they have different neighbors and they have different
no, I
cultures.
understand.
So
I understand. What's your take on, like, you feel optimistic about the Gulf states, the Saudi Arabia getting involved to improve the situation, the regional dominance that's being attempted by Iran, everyone talking about the head of the snake being Iran, the Iranian regime, while at the same time, the population of Iran generally has a much more moderate history. We talked about how Lebanon was once Paris of the Middle East and has since gotten more extreme, similar to Iran being behind all of this. So,
The IRGC.
what's that?
The IRGC.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of if that's where the real battle is taking place? Because it seems like it's really that Iran has been at war with Israel for 30 years and been funding proxies all around Israel. People talk about that in the abstract, but you're kind of plugged into
This
this.
is my
from that side.
favorite topic. It's one of my favorite topics.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
sovereignty versus caliphate. Iran has held on to the idea of establishing a caliphate in which it sits on top of the caliphate, including Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, etc., including the Gulf states. And the Gulf states, and then the reason for that is because they're religious
12th
extremists.
Imam, bringing them back.
IRGC, they're religious extremists, the imams, the whole nine. Saudi Arabia,
RAGC, say that again.
IRGC, the Iranian
Republic?
Revolutionary Corps,
Guard,
whatever,
yeah,
the crazies.
Yeah.
And Saudi Arabia, UAE, they don't want that. They want Saudi Arabia. He doesn't want not to be the king of Saudi Arabia. He doesn't want not to be the king of UAE. He likes the sovereignty that was given with the Ottoman Empire and the sovereignty of states of Lebanon, of Syria. This is why the UAE accepted Assad to the Arab League last year, even after everything he did. They want to...
There's no notion of a caliphate on the Sunni side?
Sure there is. I don't know if there is or is not. I'll be honest on that. But I can tell you it's not actively...
Being pursued
as much as the IRGC is trying to actively pursue it. So for them, destabilizing Israel, the first domino piece to fall, and then the remainder of the Middle East. I mean, don't forget Syria and Lebanon fought a war because Syria did not agree that Lebanon should even exist with its own borders. Syria said this entire area is Syria.
Right. So that's a state acting against another state, but what does that have to do with Iran, the Syria-Lebanon thing? You're saying it's more in line with what?
Syria and Iran are linked.
No,
they're not. But they fought a war. Now they have their sovereignty. Iran wants all these sovereignties to fall.
Yes.
And so it's putting its hands in every single one. In Lebanon, it put Hezbollah. In Syria, it has its people. In Gaza, it has this. So once they can grow, and look what Hezbollah did. It took over the Lebanese government.
And they co-opt the Palestinian resistance cause, even though Hamas is technically Sunni, because they want to just destabilize the region.
Yeah.
So that they could eventually... Because I always found that very confusing. Because I know that Hamas is technically a Sunni.
They're going to be on top.
But they're funded by Iran, and it's all kind of messy, but they're using...
I think they're Shiite.
Yeah?
I mean, I don't personally know, but the reason I assume that is because they have black and blue in the middle of their head. And the only ones that actually do that are Shiites because they bow down directly onto a rock when they pray.
I see.
And so it causes a
mark. Oh, is that? I didn't
mark,
know that.
yeah.
Interesting.
No idea.
You knew there was Sunni and Shia Islam, Michael.
I know that. Yeah, of course. I
Good.
just don't know the.
I didn't know that difference in
anything
price.
So
else.
yeah,
That's
Iran just wants to rule over
Yeah.
everything, and
The
the
caliphate.
Gulf states don't want that. They want their success,
Mm-hmm.
and because success is the motivator to peace, they're willing to work with Israel.
Right.
They're willing to modernize and keep that religious, whatever it may say in their text, to their heart,
Yeah.
to themselves, and in action and in doing, try to go in a different direction. Now, could it backstab us? Could it backfire on us?
Yeah.
Sure.
But what's interesting is
what are we gonna do?
theologically, it sounds like Iran is more committed on a theological
Yes.
level, yet their population is much more moderate.
100%.
Because if you look at pictures
Strange.
of grandparents from Iran during the time of the Shah, it was a much more modern secular society.
Also, Syria was pretty modern
Yeah.
before, and
So
Lebanon.
how does this
is
happen? How
okay.
does the regression happen? How does it sustain when you see protests in the street of Iran, people refusing to step on the Israeli flag? There's chants in soccer fields. I've seen clips of like condemning Hamas. So like,
Tell you
I'm
how
like
it's sustained.
in terms of optimism, where do I place my optimism? Is it with the pan-Arab? Is it with the Arab and Gulf states? Is it with Iran in terms of where Israel can have better relations? You know?
I think Israel can have strong relations with the Gulf Arab states, but I think they need to be careful, not to be too trusting, not to be too nice, and to always be honest, not to bend to satisfy them or to appease them in any way, shape, or form, but to be straight with who they are. And I think they will get respect and they will have a better shot at peace because those countries want success. They want money. They didn't build Dubai because it says it in the Quran, right? Why'd they build Dubai? Because their oil was starting to fleet from under the ground because oil moves, and they know that in a certain amount of years, they're going to run out of oil. If they run out of oil or the oil moves away from their territories, they lose a main source of income for their country. How are they going to survive? They built this entire island of Dubai to counter that exact problem, which tells you success is more important than anything else to them. Because think about what's allowed in Dubai. Drinking, walking around without a head covering. These are all mandates, by the way, in the Quran. You're not allowed to drink in the Quran. It doesn't say you can't drink unless you're in a 5-star hotel in the Jumeirah in Dubai, right? Like, you cannot drink. You cannot walk without a covered hair, just like in Judaism, by the way, as well. We can't do that.
No, theocracy is different than religious.
They keep it in. Keep it in your heart. Whatever you believe, God bless you. But when you act like a normal human being that lives in 2024.
Right.
And where does Qatar fit into that?
Qatar is just a bunch of terrorists. No, I'll be honest. They're rich. Qatar has always been they've been supporting terrorism. I have no idea. I know the UAE minister attacked Qatar strong a few years ago, saying there's just a bunch of young guys who like love investing in all these terrorists and buying buildings and buying fast cars.
Yeah.
That's it. And influencing the world. I don't know how
So they're helping Iran to their own detriment because at the end, if they help Iran enough, Iran will just be on top of them. That's how much they
I
like
think
terrorism.
they're more on they're holding on more to the theology of the conflict more than the others because
Qatar is?
Qatar is
I've
very
heard crazy
theological.
things. I've heard there's like an American air base here, and then a Hamas operative who's walking down from the gym to go to his hotel here, like in Qatar.
No.
Yes, like people who have like I saw a guy speaking on a panel talking about Qatar, and like they basically are constantly playing both sides.
Yeah.
So they allow for American operations in Qatar. They have like allies and relationships with the West in some ways, while at the same time providing protection and coverage for.
I don't know what the hell they're thinking.
And like you can easily be in a hotel in Qatar in the gym and see a Hamas.
Hania. Oh.
It can happen.
I like your calves. Your calves look amazing.
Dude, what do you lift? Oh my God! So how do you do your squats? But that can happen in Qatar, which is wacky.
Right.
It doesn't quite.
And
make
they had
sense.
just had the World Cup. They're like this modern, ancient, awful place.
It's a joke.
Interesting. So after all the sophisticated analysis, Qatar's a bunch of terrorists.
I mean,
this has been good, man. This is really interesting insight because we can talk about these things and theorize from news stories and articles and stuff. But like, you have a connection to this in a very deep, intimate way.
Were you as educated before you became a content creator, or did you read up on
I
it?
love history.
Yeah.
I love history. I mean, the one thing that I wish I'm trying to learn more about now actually is European Jewish history, not the Holocaust, but actual European Jewish history, because I don't know much about it other than 6 million Jews died.
Right.
And how the Nazis came to rise. And I'm seeing very similar patterns right now.
Have you?
Like
Go
post
ahead.
World War I is an untapped time,
Yeah.
and Russia too. There's like a real
Yeah,
interesting whole thing on, like that doesn't get a lot of cultural coverage. There's not a lot of movies about World War I or the whole period pre, which is kind of fascinating.
World War One.
yeah.
They made one recently.
All Quiet on the Western Front was just made recently.
1918, 1917 was made, but
Yeah.
there's a whole period of
But
chapter
not
of
about how
history.
it happened.
The Tsars, the Bolsheviks, all this kind of stuff
The
that was
Russian
going on.
Revolution. Yeah.
Like apparently Lenin was sent.
King
I just,
Ferdinand.
a cousin,
Yeah, I don't
cousin
know
of
much
a
about
family
it.
member of mine told me like Lenin was sent by Germany to Russia to cause an uprising.
Oh,
Like they exiled
had
him from
no
Germany
idea.
and he was sent there and it worked.
there's
Let's put him there and see what happens.
There's a series on Showtime coming out called Gentleman in Moscow that kind of tracks the Russian Revolution from a guy who was confined to a hotel the entire time.
Wow.
I
So
read the
this is stuff
book.
you like. You're
Yeah, I'm like learning,
yeah.
like because you know what, history does repeat itself.
Yeah.
Think about
So
it.
what similarities are you seeing now?
It's just so obvious to point out, right? Like the Germany, the Nazi Party, before they were elected into power, and I would say maybe 8 months prior to being elected into power, they labeled the Jew. The Nazi Party has been for a while was going after Jews. You guys caused us to sign the Versailles Treaty. The Versailles Treaty completely wrecked the German economy. However, population was kind of ignoring it. They were hearing this bullshit, but they were kind of ignoring it. These bunch of crazies. But then, and so the Nazis tried to run for president. They lost. They tried to run for a position. They lost. They got 1% of the entire German vote. 8 months later, September 1929. What happened September 29?
Depression?
Great
Stock
Depression.
market crash.
The Great Depression, and their main, whatever they were doing to make money in Germany, the German economy just completely went poof.
Made a lot of pianos.
So Hitler finally said, "Got you, aren't I right? Look who caused the problems. It was the Jews.
Juden.
They ran again, they won. Seeing the same thing here. Here it's, look, these are the oppressors. These are the whites, are the Jews. They are
the
causing
Zionists,
you the
the
issues.
Zionists.
The Zionists. They're causing you the issues with, they're taking your money. They've taken your money for healthcare. They've taken your money for free tuition. They've taken your money from this. And where is it going? It's all going to Israel. And it's all bullshit. And people are listening to it. And some people are buying into that crap. But eventually, if things get even worse with the American economy,
There's appetite for
human
conspiracy.
nature needs somebody to go after.
Yeah. Well, AI. I mean, the people are gonna be displaced from AI.
And whose
You
fault
know.
is that?
Yeah.
But for
That's-
the Jews.
Who's the guy in ChatGPT? What's his name?
Sam Altman. He's a Jew. I don't know if he's Jewish, but he sure sounds Jewish.
God said has the thing 5 degrees of separation, Joe, before blaming the Jew.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can say anything. So even Islamic extremism and terrorism, they say, but look, it was the Jewish liberals who let in immigration into our country. Everybody finds a way to blame the Jew. Joe. I've never done cat
I
sat, but
have
there it is.
That's pretty good.
It's
I
not
have a
bad.
little
I'm
bit of
getting
a
it. Good one.
theory that if Trump gets reelected, a lot of the anger that was previously directed towards the alt-right is going to start getting directed towards, if only this war in Israel didn't start, we could have voted for Biden. We
Yeah.
didn't do that. Now Trump's president. Thanks a lot, Zionists.
Yeah, we're going to be
Now
voting
you'll get
for
that.
Trump.
You'll
You're
sure
going to
you'll
get
get
that
that.
for regardless.
Trump's
Whichever way
lose.
you're
I think
going.
Trump winning is kind of a
No, but-
lose-lose in a way.
Yeah.
In the sense that if he wins, country goes nuts, and if he loses, country goes nuts. I just can't see a stable future. It's not an
Yeah, no,
endorsement
it's
one way or
messed
the
up.
other. It's just that the reaction to him winning or losing will be so immense and
Yeah.
so destabilizing.
Yeah, something's going to happen.
Like he wins, right? Half the country's elated, and the other half is gonna not again.
It's
I
honestly
think
crazy.
But,
Yeah,
but they've been through
I
it
wonder
once.
though, because I think a lot of people are checked out of the Trump thing.
You think so? The
I'm-
Trump derangement has gone
I'm
down.
much more checked out. The whole argument that like if he wins again this time, he's really going to ruin the country. That's
Yeah.
I think that's
That
floating
doesn't hold
away.
water.
Yeah.
I kind of check out on bullshit, and I think politics is complete, like between both parties, by the way, both Trump and Biden, and if there's another politician as well.
I think there's
Everybody's
another
full of
one.
shit, right? They all just want to win. And they're gonna,
speak to us. Yeah.
thank you, Donnie.
Yeah.
I think it's complete bullshit, and I really do believe it's just about politics. I see the problem with Trump, which is he's great for us, amazing for us. I'll be honest, he's probably going to be better than Biden for Israel.
Oh, yeah.
But the issue is when he does something positive for Israel, more people will hate Israel than they hate Israel now.
Yeah, they'll bundle
And
the
so-
hatred of Trump into hatred for Israel because
Right.
he's good for Israel.
Right. And so do we want that trade-off? That's for whoever, right? But Biden, what's the alternative? If you vote for Biden, he's going to
Yeah.
completely betray. He's going to betray Israel because I don't buy this bullshit. He's
Isn't
not
Israel
betraying
in Lebanon? I thought it was in Lebanon.
He's betraying it now. He's
Yeah.
betraying Israel right this moment. Him and other political.
Yeah, yes and no. He's not actually.
Yes, he
he's sick.
is.
He's sick.
Oh, come on.
Yes and no. I'm saying
And
yes,
Israel's at war,
Yes and no.
At the same, at the-
threatened by
at the
its
same
neighbors,
time,
and
though,
he's pulling weapons.
Forget Israel.
I think it is
Forget
important
Israel's
to
at war.
acknowledge.
It's not even the issue.
You know, I'm saying yes, he is, but also no, he's not because there's the America's doing a lot.
Yeah,
of
we
good
don't
for
have
Israel
Bernie
also.
Sanders as president or
Yeah, it's
AOC as
important to
president,
acknowledge
so
that.
we
It's
do
important to
acknowledge it
acknowledge it.
could be way worse.
Yeah,
Thank you, 100%. Thank you to Biden for the help that he did. But we're gonna. He's backtracking. He's backtracking because we have said nothing. We have done nothing every time he went against Israel. Every time he took an inch against Israel or what could be perceived against Israel, he got no blowback. Every time him or any politician takes an inch towards Israel, they get destroyed from the other side. But he is backtracking. Blinken told Israel, get out of Gaza. And Hamas will stay in power. They literally went and spoke with Gallant behind Netanyahu's back, so Gallant can say, "Yeah, we need to set up a Palestinian state." He is keen on doing what he wants. Damn the Jews and damn Israel. And
Also,
it's
the whole Rafah talk, they just found 4 bodies.
yeah, screw you. I'm gonna go into
Today.
Rafah.
what happened?
They
Yeah.
found 4 hostage bodies in Rafah. and
I
brought
didn't know
them
that.
home.
What happened? I didn't hear that.
Four-
Who's they found?
The IDF has
Oh.
brought back 4 bodies. I think Shani Luke was one of them.
I didn't
A
hear
bunch
this.
of 4 bodies who were in Rafah, held there.
Did you? So you
I'm
mentioned
what's-
Yoav Gallant. Did you hear the news that happened where he publicly addressed Netanyahu saying he's not going to go into Rafah unless he comes up with a Palestinian?
Yeah, and
Involvement
who
in the
told him
plan?
to say that?
What do you think?
Biden.
Oh, Genocide Joe.
Genocide Joe.
Okay.
Tell him.
I mean,
tell him
it
to
sounds
stop.
exactly like, and who else says it? Blinken. And then you see Schumer, who's supposed to be Shomer Israel and supposed to be on our side.
We need to start a
I
new
trust him.
election in Israel. I am a proud Jewish American, and they're putting all of the Jews. You know, he talks like a guy at a kiddush.
He's an asshole.
Um,
I mean,
yeah.
I look, I'll be honest.
Chuck Schumer.
Where are you? Where are our strong Jewish leaders? Where the hell is our
They're right
our
here.
Jewish
They're
Rashida
right here in
Tlaib?
this seat on Ami's
We need
house.
a Jewish Rashida Tlaib.
You gonna run?
We need a brown Jewish leader.
Yeah.
So we need.
good luck.
Um, Yeah, but I
Did
was.
you think about it? Did you think about?
I
doing
did.
stuff?
I did think about running.
Yeah.
Not now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not
If not
right
now. Isn't that the
When?
organization?
Yeah. If not now, when?
It's like the anti-Israel organization.
Yeah.
I could see it though, man. I saw you made a fiery speech and you posted somewhere. You made a fiery
Yeah, I
speech.
make a few.
You almost lost your voice. You were screaming.
I honestly, I don't lose my voice. I have a
Okay.
good voice. I have a big belly.
Habibi.
Habibi. If I go high,
Yeah.
forget about it.
All right.
Oh, I kind of want to hear that now.
What do you want to hear?
Maybe a little closing song.
Yeah. Here we go. That's Abe Hamra.
Thank you. Thank you.
At
What are we
Ami's
singing?
house.
What are we jamming?
We can just go here and just,
like a prompt or something.
from the start. Should we do it from scratch?
I think a new one.
A new one. All
What
right.
you got?
We can go new. And just remember, you have been hearing today on Ami's house from Abraham. Speak to us. And we are gonna give you something else. What are you feeling? Give me a tempo. Here we go.
What's the song?
It's
you like?
Shabbat. It's
Oh,
Friday.
yeah, how about Good Shabbos? A Good Shabbos song.
I still want to go.
I got you. I got you. I got you. I got you. I got you.
Give it to me.
يشمر الشباب اللي يشمرني اوتيلي اوتيات بينو بيني.
Give me that again and I'll clip it. 1, 2, 3, and Ki Yashmer Shabbat El Nidiri.
اوتيلي اوتيات
1, 2, 3. Here we go.
يشمر الشباب
That is Abe Hamra, ladies and gentlemen.
اوتيلي اوتيات بينو
Take it. You're watching Ami's House. Thanks so much for watching. Abe Hamra.
Thank you.
Oh boy, the Lion of Zion, ladies and gentlemen.